Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side.
All right. Hey, good morning, everybody. It is Monday morning, June the 17th, 2024. And hope you had a great weekend. Hope that you dads had a great Father's Day. I know I did. I actually got, I think, can you see it in the screen? I got a new, my wife got me a kind of new school tape player, like old boombox kind of thing. But it's cool because it's got you can plug a USB into it and digitize old cassettes onto into an electronic format. And so what I was able to do, I had a tape that I didn't have a tape player to play it. I had a tape of me singing when I was 9 years old, so 40 years ago now, and which was kind of fun to listen to. And then it was a tape, and then on there was my dad singing as well, and then in Italian, and then translating it and talking about it, which was really cool. So I really enjoyed that. That was a great way to end my Father's Day. Anyway, I hope you had a great one, and we're going to continue in Revelation this morning. The title of today's Daily Manna is Enticing, Intoxicating, and Addictive, the Me Firstness of Babylon. And we're going to be looking over these. We're coming into a new section of Revelation now. So we're going to be transitioning into this next section and just looking at the first couple of verses today. I couldn't really get much further in without feeling like I wasn't able to do justice to them. So we're going to be looking at just the first two verses and then picking back up with that tomorrow. So let's read the end of chapter 16. The seventh angel poured out his bowl into the air. A loud voice came out of the temple from the throne saying, "It is done." And there were flashes of lightning and rumblings and clashes of thunder and a great earthquake such as never happened since mankind has been on the earth. So mighty was the quake. Then the great city was split into three parts, and the cities of the nations collapsed. Babylon the Great was remembered before God to force her to drink the cup of the wine of his furious wrath. Every island fled away, and no mountains were to be found. Enormous hail, about 100 pounds each, falls from heaven on the people. And the people cursed God because of the plague of hail. So extreme was that plague. Let's continue. We're going to read the first 8 verses of 17, and then we'll go back to verse 1. Then one of the 7 angels holding the 7 bowls, and the word is "and one of them," so it doesn't necessarily. And one of the 7 angels holding the 7 bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come, I will show you the sentencing or the judgment, the verdict of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. The earth's kings committed sexual immorality with her, and those who dwell on the earth got drunk with the wine of her immorality. So he carried me away in the spirit, in the Ruach, into a wilderness, and I saw a woman sitting on a scarlet beast that was full of blasphemous names and had 7 heads and 10 horns. The woman was clothed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold and precious stones and pearls. She was holding a golden cup in her hand full of detestable things and the filth of her immorality. And on her forehead was written a name, a mystery: Babylon the Great, the mother of prostitutes and the detestable things of the earth. And I saw the woman drunk with the blood of the Kedoshim and with the blood of the witnesses of Yeshua. When I saw her, I was totally astounded. The angel said to me, "Why are you astonished? I will tell you the mystery of the woman and of the beast that carries her, which has the 7 heads and 10 horns. The beast that you saw was and is not, and yet is about to rise up from the abyss and head for destruction. Those who dwell on the earth, whose names have not been written in the book of life from the foundation of the world, will be astonished when they see the beast, because he was and is not and is to come." So the verse 3 here gives us this phrase. It says, "I was carried away in the spirit." This is the 3rd time we get this kind of an expression in Revelation. So it's really signaling a high. I mean, we've had a number of transitions within chapters, from chapter to chapter, but this is kind of a major transition between major units in the whole book of Revelation. We've just concluded the largest unit, which would be chapters 4 through 16. The first in the Spirit section, John is on the island of Patmos, is on the earth, and deals with the 7 letters to the congregations. We read in Revelation 1:10, "I was in the Ruach, in the Spirit, on the day of the Lord, and I heard behind me a loud voice like that of a trumpet." The next in the Spirit section is in chapter 4. And again, that takes us into the throne room, and we see the scroll, and then the seals, and the trumpets, and the bowls. Chapter 4, verses 1 and 2. "After these things I looked, and behold, a door was standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard speaking with me like a trumpet said, 'Come up here, and I will show you what must take place after these things.' Immediately I was in the Spirit, I was in the Ruach, and behold, a throne was standing in heaven, and one seated on the throne." So that began this next section, which we had all of the vision that John was given in the Spirit, chapters 4 through 16. So now this 3rd section takes us through a description of Babylon, the great city, and then the destruction of Babylon, the great city. And then it leads us into, when we get to the next section, is going to begin in chapter 21, verse 10, which is the descending of the New Jerusalem into to the, it's the descending of the New Jerusalem from heaven at the beginning of the 4th in the Spirit section. Jump ahead to Revelation 21:10. "Then he carried me away," and again, this would be in chapter 21, is another one of the angels with the 7 bowls. So there's a connection between what's happening here and what happened there. "Then he carried me away in the Spirit to a great and high mountain, and he showed me the holy city Jerusalem coming down out of heaven from God." And so this section, just to kind of give us an overview, we get this detailed description of the great city of Babylon the Great, in Revelation 17. And then it moves to an extensive description of her destruction in Revelation 18. And what we end up with really is a contrast where you have Babylon, which is the great prostitute, is, representing basically the evil city of human civilization that's in opposition to God, which is in contrast with the bride of the Lamb. So you have the prostitute and the bride of the Lamb, who is the holy city Jerusalem that comes down from heaven from God, and the holy people of God. And so what begins here is a look at a look at this next part of the story. But there's a relationship between what we've just read and what we're about to read, in that it does seem like it goes into some greater detail of some of what we've just read, sort of in backward order. So there seems to be a connection between all of these things in the sequence that we just went through back in chapter 15. Remember, there was the vision of the saints in heaven singing the song of Moses and the Lamb, and that's followed by the seven bowls of wrath, right? Which the first four echo the first four trumpets, but there's intensified disaster against those who follow the beast, the followers, those who worship the beast. And then the sixth bowl of wrath looks forward to the last battle, and then the seventh bowl is with the great earthquake and the destruction of Babylon. And so the same things are almost mirrored. They're done in reverse now. So that seventh was the destruction of Babylon. This opens up now with the destruction of Babylon, the great prostitute whose doom has come. And then in chapter 19, we get more worship, but we also get the last battle, which mirrors kind of the sixth bowl, and then backing up to the singing the song of the Lamb, of Moses and the Lamb, and we get to the New Jerusalem now as a bride adorned for marriage, the marriage supper of the Lamb. And so we see this relationship, this opening up of what is to come with greater clarity. And so let's look at these first couple of verses today. Verse 1. Then one of the seven angels holding the seven bowls came and spoke with me, saying, "Come," or "Come here." Like there's come here. Like bring. And he says, "And I will show to you," or I'm going to explain to you, I'm going to make clear to you. That the show here has to do with an explanation, to make clearer, to kind of unveil it. I'm going to unveil this to you. The sentencing, is the word, the judgment, or the verdict, is rendering the verdict of the great prostitute who sits on many waters. So one of the seven angels who had the seven bowls is going to be John's guide here. Both times it's interesting what you'll see at the end of this section and at the end of the next section in chapter 20, or in the next section. There's these two times where John actually goes to, or excuse me, in chapter 19, he goes to worship the angel, and the angel says, no, stop it. Get up. I'm a servant just like you. Don't do that. Like in the midst of it, John there's so much in the grandeur of everything. But these angels with the seven bowls, their bowls constitute the seven last things that are going to bring to conclusion God's anger and usher in the final renewal of all things. So the evil has to be dealt with before this restoration, before all things are made new. Everything's being cleared out. And so the angel addresses John and invites him to, I want you to understand, I want to explain to you this decisive verdict, which was previewed to us right back in chapter 16, in which God pouring out the great cup of his wrath, furious wrath. We're gonna see that now against who is called the great prostitute, the great harlot. The word and we're gonna see becomes a key word. He describes her as the great prostitute who lives beside the many waters. Understand that word for prostitutes. And that word is a word. So we will see the word prostitute, harlot, sexual immorality. It's all a version of that same word. Here he describes her as the great prostitute who lives beside many waters, right? And so that first part of the image draws upon themes that we see throughout the Hebrew Scriptures. The prophets of Israel had used the imagery, the picture of someone of a prostitute or someone who was sexually unfaithful to the covenant, to signify the unfaithful and just sort of the indulgent behavior of the various nations and city-states, and even Jerusalem itself, and about Samaria and Tyre and Nineveh. We see this language used throughout the Hebrew Scriptures. So in the Hebrew Bible, in a broader term, porneia in Greek, but sexual immorality and unfaithfulness are a metaphor for unfaithfulness to God, turning away from the Lord to unfaithfully worship a false god. We see it it's all through the Scriptures. Just to give you a couple of pictures of talking about in 1 Chronicles 5:25, talking about Manasseh in the northern kingdom. It says they were unfaithful to the God of their fathers and prostituted themselves to the gods of the peoples of the land whom God had destroyed before them. Psalm 73:27 says, "Behold, those far from you will perish. You put an end to all who, like a prostitute or like a harlot, are unfaithful to you." Isaiah 1, verses 21 to 23. "How the faithful city became a harlot. She once was full of justice, righteousness lodged in her, but now murderer." So you see, I just want to note as we read this portion in Isaiah, and this is that even in that case, it includes the imagery of a prostitute, or it includes sexual immorality in a literal way, but it's not limited to that. That has become a blanket symbol for unfaithfulness to God and against God in a number of iterations in the way that it is played out. So she once was full of justice, righteousness lodged in her, but now murderers. Your silver has become dross, right? It's not pure anymore. Your wine diluted by water. Your princes, your nobles are rebellious and friends with thieves. Everyone loves a bribe and chases after rewards. They don't defend the orphan, nor does a widow's case come to them. So all of that which goes against the very nature of God, who is the father to the fatherless, who is the one who is the defender, the protector of widows, Psalm 68:5, right? But here, God's people are being unfaithful, and so that is imaged to us, symbolized to us, under the language of prostitution. And so in the context of Revelation in 17 and 18, the imagery of the harlot, the great prostitute, is the imagery of the prostitution, the selling out of all that is right and noble for that includes selling it out for questionable ends of power and luxury, self-indulgence. And the word that gets used over and over and over again in Greek is this word or an iteration of this. The root word is pornis or porneia. We had seen this language in the letters to to two of the congregations in particular, the congregations at Pergamum and Thyatira back in chapter 2. And it appeared in close association with eating food sacrificed to idols. It was in association with the activities of a woman who calls herself a prophet, but whom the resurrected Yeshua calls Jezebel. Revelation 2:14. Yeshua said, "But I have to Pergamum." He says, "But I have a few things against you. You have some there who hold to the teaching of Balaam, who was teaching Balak to put a stumbling block before the children of Israel to eat food sacrificed to idols and to commit sexual immorality." Of course, this is referring back to the story that you read about in Numbers chapter 25, and then it's clarified in Numbers 31 that it was Balaam who coached Balak, the king of Moab, to draw the sons of Israel into sexual immorality. So that was literal there, but it was in connection just with the worship of the Baal of Peor. Revelation 2:20 and 21 says, "But I have this against you. You tolerate that woman Jezebel, who calls herself a prophetess, yet she is teaching and deceiving my servants to commit sexual immorality," pornusai is the word, "and to eat food sacrificed to idols. I gave her time to repent, but she refuses to repent of her porneas, of her immorality." Again, the language here, it includes sexual immorality. It's not simply symbolic, but it's not limited to sexual immorality. It is symbolic of unfaithfulness to the Lord, of unfaithfulness to that relationship, to that covenant relationship with the Lord. Here, the angel calls this one that he calls the great prostitute. In Greek is tis pornis, tis megalis, prostitute, the great one. The one who, above all, is guilty of unfaithful conduct, of influencing others toward it. And then he adds this significant description, who lives beside many waters. So who is this referring to? There are some scholars that say, well, this refers to Rome. One guy writes, he goes, "Even though Rome itself was inland several miles up from the Tiber River, her ultimate power lay not only with her armies, but also with her control over the entire Mediterranean Sea." So there are those who say also with Rome's international power and control that this is indicative of that. You can actually see world powers throughout history are connected with many waters, with oceans and rivers, and that those are now. I believe that. So and then others say this refers to Babylon, and Babylon will be named momentarily. So is it literal Babylon? Babylon was situated on the Euphrates, had a lot of tributaries and canals. You'll remember in Jeremiah 51, we read in verse 12, "Raise a banner at Babylon's walls, strengthen the guard, station watchmen, prepare ambushes. For Adonai has both planned and accomplished what he spoke about the Babylonians. You," verse 18, "dwelling by many waters, rich in treasures, your end has come, the measure of your covetousness." Now, Babylon is going to be mentioned momentarily. If Rome is anywhere in view, again, it would be that Rome is the empire of the day. Rome is the empire of that day, operating in what you could call the spirit of Babylon. This spirit of indulgence and self-exaltation and pleasure and power, of greed. What you see, like today, the United States would be considered the great Babylon of the world. So you can look at we're the great superpower of the world, and we can see in the way that just the decadence in our society, the greed, there's so much obviously in the godlessness of our society. which is exalted and glorified and magnified and is celebrated. Babylon, beginning with the Tower of Babel in Genesis 11, is the picture. It's the epitome of human pride, of conquest. It's the spirit of all that is hostile and against the Lord. I will exalt myself. I will be lifted up, right? And so, again, as the text opens up, all of this becomes more clear. We do see that it's Babylon. And then later in verse 15, the waters, this great prostitute that's upon the many waters, the waters are identified as peoples, multitudes, nations, and languages. Revelation 17:15. Then he tells me, the waters that you saw where the prostitute is seated are peoples and multitudes and nations and tongues. Right? So that's the waters. There's symbolism here. So, people can go, well, I think it's Rome. It can be Rome was epitomizing in that day the spirit of Babylon, which has, is at work in many iterations. It's everything that rises against the Lord. And so what immediately follows here is not necessarily the description initially of the punishment of the great prostitute, of the great city, but it's a further description of the city in terms of her relationship to much of this empire, her relationship to much of the rest of the known world. Verse 2, the earth's kings committed sexual immorality, a pornusan, with her. And those who dwell on the earth got drunk with the wine of her porneas, with the wine of her immorality. Right? So this theme, this porneas theme, continues in verse 2 with the added explanation of the significant influence that she has across the whole world. The earth's kings, a pornusan, they engaged in this act with her, right? They were drawn into Babylon's indulgent behavior. And then the back part of the verse rephrases this as an intoxication, right? So they're enticed, and they're intoxicated, right? It's a drunkenness, a moral incapacitation, as it were, on the part of those who are inhabitants of the earth. When the language for the inhabitants of the earth here is kind of an emphatic, this is their home. The root word oikos is house or home, is katon oikuntes, which is like this is their dwelling place, this is their home. And those that this is where they've committed to, this is their home. This is they were enticed and intoxicated by the porneas of this of the great porneas of the great prostitute. The song that I heard my dad singing in Italian, he then translated, was basically saying, the way he translated it says, "My country is a heaven full of love," and the song is basically saying that it's the song that's saying my citizenship is not here. My country is heaven and is full of love, and there I'm going to meet my Lord. There I'm going to meet my Savior. That's my citizenship. That's the kingdom that I'm a part of. But the kingdom of this world we see reflected in Babylon here. And again, it says the inhabitants of the earth got drunk with the wine. They got intoxicated on the wine of her porneas. And so again, in light of the background we've seen from the Hebrew scriptures, these references to sexual immorality promoted by a prostitute should be read more as symbolic for sin and unfaithfulness to God, right? She leads the nations away from purity, from following the true God, into idolatrous worship. even in the prophet Ezekiel, which we made reference to this passage last week, but in Ezekiel 16 verses 49 and 50, Ezekiel talks about Sodom, and we always think of Sodom and Gomorrah, of course, in regard to their sexual sins, but at the root, Ezekiel points to this, and he's using Sodom as a symbol for the southern kingdom of Judah, or excuse me, he's speaking to Judah, and he's speaking about the northern kingdom of Israel. And he says, Ezekiel 16:49, "Behold, this was the iniquity of your sister Sodom: pride, gluttony, and careless ease. So had she and her daughters, and she did not strengthen the hand of the poor and needy. So they were haughty and committed abomination before me. Therefore I removed them when I saw it." Right? So that sort of me firstness that can be symbolized in the selfish act of porneas, includes all of pride, gluttony, careless ease, not strengthening the hand of the poor and needy. It includes its symbolism. It includes the porneas itself, but it's symbolism for all of that. One scholar writes this. He says the great prostitute was Rome, to be sure, for the given historical moment, but not she alone. In reality, the summation of all that which is prostitution, as Babylon in her time, who became the symbol of it. Rather than sexual prostitution per se, this prostitution involves unfaithfulness to God's covenant, being in communication by sacred prostitution with the religious and spiritual powers, with the satanic sources and esotericism. Sorry for all the big stuff. The spirit of Babylon and Rome outlasts both individual empires, right, to represent evil empires as the world in its most tyrannical form. So it's beyond just, is this Rome? Yes. Is this Babylon? Yes. It's the underlying spirit that's at work. And a name like, we're going to finish up here, but a name like the Great Prostitute can seem like something that's in the distance, something like that doesn't affect us, or in our imaginations, we think of, kind of Gotham-like, something Gotham-like from the, Superman or Batman, well, Superman too. New York City at its worst, the seedy underbelly, or Vegas or Hollywood, and again, the seedy underbellies of those places. But again, the root word here is that familiar word that is not limited to New York City or Vegas or Hollywood, right? It's porneia. It's pervasive. It's got access into homes and families. It's an epidemic. And so that's the imagery. The porneia epidemic that we deal with in our society today, right, is rooted in me firstness, in selfishness, just self-gratification, me, devoid of relationship. Right? It's dehumanizing. It's not concerned about the other. The other is an object. What's in it for me, right? That's at the heart of me firstness. You're just an object. And so what we see here is that it's that which is intoxicating. It's that which what the enemy offers is you can be your own God. Meet you first. And it's enticing. And then the pleasure of that and the power of that. And it's intoxicating. People get hooked on it, but it leaves them empty. And ultimately, it's in opposition to God's ways. It's in opposition to everything that he calls us to. He calls us, if anyone would come after me, he must what? Deny himself. Deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. He calls us to something other than that. But the kingdom of this world, of Babylon, is at work trying to entice, offering up like drug dealers. I'll give you the first one for free. Offering up momentary pleasure, offering up something that will never fulfill you but keep you coming back. That's what the great porneia does. And that's what is ultimately going to face destruction, because it is destructive. It is the He's bringing judgment on the destroyers of humanity, the destroyers of the earth. And so Babylon is coming under judgment, and that's what we're beginning to see as we come into Revelation chapter 17. All right, well, I went a few minutes over. So we'll continue then with verse 3 tomorrow. All right, and beyond. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom, shalom. Have a beautiful day.
I am thine, O Lord. I have heard thy voice, and it's all thy love to me. But I long to rise in the arms of faith and be closer drawn to thee. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Consecrate me now to thy service, Lord, by the power of grace divine. Let my soul look up with steadfast hope, and my will be lost in thine. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side. Draw me nearer, nearer, blessed Lord, to the cross where thou hast died. Draw me nearer, 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 blessed Lord, to thy precious bleeding side.